In this session, I'd like to take a brief break from our studies on modes and look at the strong relationship between major and minor scales. Along the way, I'd also like to introduce you to two very easy scales that you can use to improvise or construct basslines with. So let's get started. So far, we've been learning about the modes of the major scale, and to date we've explored Ionian, which is the major scale, Dorian, the second mode, Mixolydian, which is the fifth mode, and more recently the Aeolian mode. For today though, we'll be concentrating solely on Ionian and Aeolian, and as we've been doing so far, we'll base all our learning in the key of C major. Now, staying with the concept of keys within music, here's a very important fact that you should know. Every major key has a relative minor key. And all this means is that we can look at music from two directions, either major or minor. Okay, on its own it sounds a little more confusing than it actually is, so let me explain. If we take the C major scale, for example, we know that it doesn't contain any sharps or flats. See, they're all natural notes. And in an earlier lesson, when we encountered key signatures for the first time, we learned that every major scale was in fact its own key signature. So, quite clearly, the scale of C major is in the key of C major. But as we've just learned, this major key also has a relative minor key. So how do we go about working this out? Okay, luckily for us, this is very easy to do. To work out the relative minor of any major key, all we have to do is find the sixth note. And it's that simple. So let's give it a try. So, counting up through C major, the sixth note, as you should know by now, is an A. And piecing this all together, the relative minor to the key of C major is A minor. Taking a G major scale, for example, we can use the instrument to count up to the sixth note. And from this, we now know that the relative minor to G major is E minor. Now, this relativity exists because both scales are constructed from the same series of notes. And when played as a scale from either the major root note, in this case a C, there's a strong and very distinct major tonality going on. Hear how this series of notes instinctively leads our ear back to the root note again. However, by playing the same series of notes, but this time starting on an A, which is the root note of the relative minor, this time we hear a strong minor tonality. Notice now how our ear is brought naturally back through the minor scale and round to the root note again. So going back to our minor scale, in this case B minor, you'll be pleased to hear that this relationship works in the other direction. So this time we can use it to find out any minor's relative major key. Okay, to work out the relative major of any minor key, all we look for is the minor third. So, recalling any one of our shapes for a minor third on the fingerboard, the minor third of B minor is a D. And putting all this together, we find that the relative major of B minor is quite simply D major.